Yeah, so it looks like we're coming in here. We're in game 2. Bradley Carpenter is up a game with his Abzan Company deck against Andrew Tenjum on Grixis Twin. Andrew is currently 4th on our leaderboard. Bradley is 17th on our leaderboard.
Yeah.
And so it looks like we have
2 giants battling it out.
Yeah, we got a Tassiger on Tenjum's side with some mana, an Eternal Witness, and a Wall of Roots with a bunch of counters on it. So some of those are -0, -1 counters, and some of them are +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out.
So it looks like it's 3-5.
Yep.
At this point, but Bradley has a bunch of lands in play, and so does Tenjum. And in games like this, that usually seems like it's going to favor the person playing blue.
Yeah, but this Abzan Company deck, it can grind out a lot. If Tenjum doesn't combo off or have something that generates a lot of card advantage, I think the Abzan Company still has the tools it needs to win a much longer game.
Yeah, so it looks like we got the Eternal Witness for Bradley Carpenter. The trigger was actually on the stack when we joined the game. He got back a Path to Exile that handled that Tasker from Andrew Tenjum. So he doesn't really have a threat on the battlefield at the moment, but he does have a Desolate Lighthouse there in his land stack, which is very good. So we've got a Serum Visions from Tenjum. He's going to draw very quickly. I couldn't see what the first scry was, but the second card was a Terminate, which seems like it's a good Magic card.
And one thing to note is Tenjum's pace of play is pretty fast. He's down a game right now, and he knows that his deck doesn't win particularly quickly. I expect that in this matchup, he probably boarded out some of the combo and boarded into more of a controlling deck. So you're going to see him playing extra fast just because he needs to win 2 games, and he doesn't have that much time to do it.
Yeah, when that happens from the other side of the table, it's important to just keep your pace of play the same.
Yeah.
Your opponent can speed up sometimes because they feel the time pressure. It's not on you to keep pace with your opponent, but as long as you're keeping a reasonable pace, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and these games can certainly drag out a long time. The Grixis Twin deck is definitely the control deck, and the Abzan Company deck is the aggressor in a lot of ways. But there's a little bit of back and forth on those 2 things. The roles can switch because each of these decks have a lot of flexibility, and each of these decks have a lot of card advantage, a lot of interactions, and they can really drag things out for quite a while.
Yeah, so it looked like Tenjum just passed the turn. Bradley has gone ahead and activated his Gavany Township, so his Wall of Roots is going to get even bigger.
It's a 1/6 now.
Yeah, it's a 1/6. Math is hard.
So
Bradley's just going to draw a card, attack with his Eternal Witness. Now Andrew is at 14, so he's not too close to being dead, but every damage is going to count here as the game starts to move into this end game.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we haven't seen this at all today. Basically, every single game we've seen has been a lot more of a one-sided victory. This is one of the first chances we get to see just, 2 kids playing, some creatures in removal and slowly grinding each other out. This is the kind of Magic that I like. This is my favorite.
Absolutely. So we're seeing Tenjum here has activated Desolate Lighthouse on the end step, untapped Druid to a Pia, and Karen was able to get it onto the battlefield here. Passing the turn, Bradley's just going to go ahead and activate his Gavany Township. And while we wait for the players to finish up here, I do want to put this out there. We're looking for some questions to answer via social media. So anybody have any questions for us, whether it be about Magic or about us in particular, make sure you hit us up on Twitter. We're going to be answering those next round. But for the time being, Andrew Tenjum has gone from having nothing on the battlefield to Pia and Kieran and Colgan's command, kill your guy, do something else.
Yeah, quite good. A very good line of play. I mean, it just shows how good Pia and Kieran Nalar can be as a top deck in these mid-range grindy mirrors. The Pia is a lot of offense, and it's also a lot of defense. So really, everything Andrew's in the market for. Now,
we do see here Bradley was able to find a Kitchen Finks, which is very good in combination with Gavany Township. So that +1/+1 counter is able to negate the -1/-1 counter from the Persist and just keep it coming back and back and back.
Yeah, Andrew's going to have to commit probably more resources than he would prefer to kill that Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, likely he's going to have to use a removal spell and then use another removal spell in response to a Gavany Township activation.
Yeah, something like that. I doubt he'll be able to just ignore it and fly over because Bradley is already so far ahead on life, so Andrew has to deal with it somehow. And this is one of the disadvantages of playing a control deck, is you really do have to answer every single threat your opponent creates, whereas Bradley, on the other hand, he can kind of ignore some of the stuff Andrew's doing and just try to beat down.
Now, Bradley has drawn a card here. An interesting play would be if Andrew happens to find another copy of Kolaghan's Command to where he could chump with his Pia and Karen and then rebuy it with Kolaghan's Command to generate even more tokens to try and increase his clock. But we're going to see Bradley's just going to pass the turn. Andrew's going to untap, draw a card, activate his Lighthouse. He's really digging through his deck for some action or some kind of answer for that Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, and this is a good display of how each deck is working with a lot of card advantage, but that card advantage comes in different ways. A lot of Bradley's card advantage comes in the form of Kitchen Finks, Collected Company, Eternal Witness, Voice of Resurgence, cards that on their own are 2-for-1. And while Andrew has some of those in the form of cards like P and Kieran Nalaar, he's really relying on Desolate Lighthouse to just make all of his dead draws redraws.
Absolutely. And that's just the theme of this Abzan deck, is just having every card be value.
Yeah.
So we do have a Birds of Paradise from Bradley, and it looked like he has a Path to Exile in his hand. But we do see Tenjum's just going to cycle that remand on the Birds just to try and draw a card. He is feeling the pressure of the time clock ticking down. Getting draws in these tournaments are almost the same as getting losses when we're early in day one like this, when you're trying to make it into day two. So he's trying to figure out some way to win this game.
Yeah, and playing the remand on the Birds of Paradise has to be one of the worst feelings at all. I mean, essentially, you're waiting for your opponent to cast a spell so you can pay 2 mana to cycle your card, and you know that they're going to be replaying their card.
Absolutely.
Especially with how much mana each of these players have.
So it looks like Bradley is just not using his Gavany Township, and Tenjum decided to put the brakes on his attack and just pass the turn. So Bradley's drawn a card. He's going to attack here. Now let's see what Tenjum does.
I imagine Andrew's going to try to take some sort of opportunity to kill this, and there we go.
Yeah, it looks like a Terminate, and then he's going to save up 3 mana so that he can throw the Thopter at that Kitchen Finks if Bradley decides to ever try and use that Gavany Township.
It's a little scary, though, because right now it's a little bit of a staring contest, because Bradley doesn't want to activate his Gavany Township or else Andrew will shoot it, and Andrew doesn't want to shoot it or else Bradley will activate his Gavany Township.
Yep, so at this point he can just start attacking with that Thopter. If he has another removal spell for that Kitchen Finks, he can press the action at that point, but that really isn't going to do much for him. But again, he does have to make a move here to try and win this game at some point.
Yeah, the clock's ticking down for Andrew. This is pretty rough.
So we've got a Lighthouse activation from Andrew. He's just going to discard an Inquisition. Looks like a Watery Grave is getting tapped, and I can imagine this is going to be a Tasigur.
Yeah, it looks like he's delving. And Tasigur is certainly one of the cards that Andrew really needs. I mean, it's one of his few sources of repeated card advantage.
And now his graveyard does look pretty thick, so with that Tasigur activations, he does have to be wary of actually milling himself and being able to win the game.
Yeah, another thing that's going to be a little annoying is because his graveyard is so full of cards, you know that whatever he gets back probably isn't going to be exactly what he wants.
Not only that, but it's going to give Bradley a lot of options, which just takes time.
Yeah. And so Andrew's just letting it die, doesn't want to tap his mana to activate it for fear of the Kitchen Finks getting another counter.
Yep, absolutely. So it looks like Bradley's found a Horizon Canopy. I have to imagine he's going to cash that in to draw a card.
So now that we're at this stage, it seems like it's basically just a top deck war, and it's going to come down to who can draw something that's really powerful. Andrew was able to draw Tasigur, which is one of the mid-range haymakers. Bradley has just had a Birds of Paradise for the last 2 turns. So it's basically Bradley's turn to try to draw something that's really good, but we're mostly at parity on this board state.
Now, it does look like Bradley has 3 Gavany Townships in his deck, so at any point, if he happens to draw a second Gavany Township, things could get real ugly for Andrew.
Oh yeah, the only thing better than 1 Gavany Township activation is 2 Gavany Township activations.
Did you hear that from BBD?
No, did he say that?
Yes. We've played a lot of Gavany Township in our past.
It's a good card.
Looks like Tenjum is just going to loot with his Loot House yet again. He's going to discard that Scalding Tarn, pass the turn back. Looks like we got a Gavany Township activation. He's going for it now, which I think is actually fine. If Tenjum wants to get rid of that Thopter or another card to kill that Kitchen Finks, so be it. I'm going to have 2 1/2 flyers that are next turn going to be 2/3 flyers, and you're dead in 2 turns.
Yeah, I think basically Bradley wanted to hold off on it because it kept Andrew's mana tied down a little bit. Andrew didn't want to activate his Tasigur, for example, but now at this point, it's just a little too profitable for Bradley to go for it because he's going to have those birds, and now he can untap, activate his Township again, and potentially swing for 4, even if he doesn't draw anything good.
That Township has just been the card of this game, it seems. There are 7 counters on that Wall of Roots from the Gavany Township.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a 2-turn clock.
Good. So we're going to see an attack here from, looks like he decided not to use the township.
Oh, I wonder if he drew something good.
Which I guess is fine considering that it's still I guess it's not a 2-turn clock. But he
Well,
drew
he
a
can do
Scavenging Ooze, which is a good card.
Yeah, he can still activate Township end of turn, untap, activate it again, and it's still technically a 2-turn clock.
That's true. All right, so we're going to see a Terminate from Tenjum on the Scavenging Ooze. I have to imagine that Bradley's going to eat some cards out of Tenjum's graveyard.
Yeah, it would be nice if he could exile basically all the things that would be good Snapcaster Mage targets. I think those would be the things that he's going to prioritize first. He's certainly not going to be able to whittle away enough where it would impact Delve. So he's probably just going to be going for Snapcaster Mage targets. That would be my guess.
Yeah, so we're seeing here a Dispel, couple Kolaghan's Command, and a Serum Visions off of that Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, I mean, not even trying to exile creatures. Just feels like he's at a completely comfortable life total and is really just looking to exile things that'll be useful to Andrew.
Yeah, he has lethal coming up here in a couple turns. He's just trying to limit Andrew's options.
Yeah, and still leaving himself with enough mana, despite all those Ooze activations, to use Township. And now these birds are up to 3 toughness, which is particularly relevant in case Andrew has anything like Electrolyze. I know he used his 2 Kolaghan's commands, so he might not actually have Electrolyze, and it doesn't look like he does.
They are still vulnerable to Lightning Bolt, but if he is able to untap, then he can basically just kill Andrew with these Birds of Paradise, which is always a good feeling.
Yeah, when your Birds of Paradise are starting to become Stormbreath Dragons, that's pretty good. And they're not too far away from that.
So Tenjum's just going to pass the turn to Bradley, who's going to take a draw. He does have lethal on the board here if he decides to go for it with these Birds of Paradise. Got a Snapcaster Mage. Looks like Bradley has... Oh, thought it might have been a choke, but it looks like it's not a choke because he doesn't have it in his list. I think he might have drawn a Scavenging Ooze for the turn.
I mean, this Snapcaster Mage is good, but it feels terrible to use a Terminate on a Birds of Paradise at this stage in the game.
Yep, you got to do what you got to do.
This really highlights the strength of a card like Gavany Township, though, where it's just something that's embedded in your mana base. It's not something that's really taking up a significant spell slot.
Yep.
And because you have cards like Birds of Paradise that are great mana accelerants, but they're bad to draw later in the game, Gavany Township gives you the power to actually make them into real cards, even in the top deck war situation like this.
Yeah, Gavany Township is really one of the cards alongside Collected Company that has allowed decks like this to continue to flourish after the banning of Birthing Pod. Before with Pod, you would be able to turn your 1-drops into 2-drops and so on. And even then, those decks would play some number of Gavany Townships. There's ways to take advantage of those weaker creatures in the late game, but it really is a cornerstone of these Abzan Company style of decks.
Yeah, and we saw Todd Stevens playing Naya, and he played against a twin player. I believe it was Ross Merriam. And we see Ross stay on the twin plan, even post-board. He didn't try to be more controlling. And I think that's because a lot of the times it's hard to grind out these company decks. If you try to control them, it's just difficult because they have a lot of 2-for-1s.
Yep, so it looks like Tenjum did have another Snapcaster Mage so that he could terminate that other Birds of Paradise. So he's currently alive, at least for now.
Yeah,
and at this point, he can't really mount an offense against Bradley because that Wall of Roots is just going to eat creatures when he attacks.
Yeah, that is I mean, does that have 5 -1/-1 counters on it and 9 +1/+1 counters on it?
-0 -1.
Oh,
and then
of course.
9, so it's 9 power.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is we need something that lets us attack walls, like Aerial Formation. Is that the card I'm thinking of?
Yeah, walls can attack.
I mean, I think I just broke it. I think that's what Bradley needs.
Little Rolling Stones action.
Oh, there we go. Give me that stuff.
Well, Tenjum did find another PA and Karen Nalar, which is going to give him some flyers.
So Aerial Formation is not the card I was thinking of, but the enchantment. Oh, well. I'll figure it out later. Someone on Twitter can let me know.
So it looks like we've got maybe a spell for Bradley to cast. 4 mana, Collected Company. Oh, it is.
Wow.
If this resolves, this is going to be rough for Tenjum.
Yeah, Tenjum is doing a good job controlling the board despite
I guess he's going to remand
everything. Hopefully he gets a
Run
dispel.
it back.
What you got? Wow.
It's going to resolve. Let's see what Bradley can find off this Collected Company.
Yeah, and now things were in Bradley's favor, and they swung into Tenjum's favor, and we'll see if Bradley can kind of regain control of this game.
So we've got this Malera and a Spellskite. Now, they don't look like much right now, but that Gavany Township can just keep making them bigger and bigger. And Bradley's at high enough life total that it's going to be difficult for Tenjum to try and pressure it effectively. He's going to have to at some point, though, because he does only have what looks to be about 10 cards left in his deck.
Yeah, the fact that Andrew's life total is so low is really a big burden. These Grixis decks usually don't have any way to gain life, and the fact that he's so low, he basically needs to treat every single threat that Bradley has as a lethal threat. And so that means that a lot more of Bradley's draws are going to be live in a way that they wouldn't otherwise be live.
So it looks like we've got an attack for 2 here with the Flying Thopters, leaving back the Snapcaster Mages. Assault formation.
There we go. That's what I was talking about.
There you go, guys. You heard it here first. SCG Live.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew Boswell, Assault formation. So Tenjum, he's starting to mount a little bit of an offense, but the time is running down. He definitely has to try and finish this game. Bradley's been doing just about all he can to try and close it out.
Another flyer is good, though.
We do have a Vendilion click here on the draw step. I imagine that's what Tenjum's been digging for with those Loot House activations when he's so low. It did look like Bradley picked up a Eternal Witness, which is very good.
Yeah, and the fact that Bradley is at 16 is not as high as you think, because Andrew can come in for 5, knock him down to 11, and come in for 5 again, but those
Thopters represent 2 extra damage each.
Exactly, that's what I was going for.
So it looks like we shipped the Eternal Witness to the bottom. Bradley's going to take a draw. I didn't quite catch it. It looks like it's just a white-bordered card, so it might be a land. No, he drew an Anafenza.
So again, Bradley's rebuilding his board, but he really needs some sort of defense in the air. Andrew's got a fair amount of chump blockers to buy a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But this is coming down to the wire on each side, actually.
How do you attack here? I wonder if you also attack with the Spellskite, because it has to be blocked, otherwise it's lethal because of the Township.
Yeah, I agree, and it's likely that you would be able to take down 2 creatures if any kind of blocks were tried to, like he tried to make a trade.
Absolutely. So we've got another Wall of Roots here. Just going to bolster onto the Anafenza. I imagine we're going to see a Township activation on Tenjum's end step, but he passes it over, he takes a draw. The library's looking mighty thin. Let's see if he can whittle this one out.
Yeah, this is going to be a situation where Bradley just has so much more power and toughness that it's going to be hard for Andrew to deal with it. And given the life discrepancy, Andrew's kind of behind on the race, and it's going to be pretty tricky. But Andrew's a really good player. He might still have maybe a Pestermite or Splinter Twin hanging out, and that really would be his best bet to win this game, I think.
Absolutely. Both of these players have played this game very well. They've done everything that they needed to at every point in the game to at least stay alive and give themselves a shot. Here we see 2 lethal attackers coming through. The Spellskite at a 2/6 and a Fenza at a 4/4. Bradley does have an activation of Township available if needed. So he's going to go up top to 10. I wonder if he's going to also use the other token. It doesn't look like it.
So this is
and this Kitchen Finks is going to be real rough.
Yeah. This is my favorite form of card advantage. It's when you make your opponent chump block. That's my favorite.
I got big guys.
Yeah, I got big guys. You got to block them, and your guys are small, so they just die.
Yeah, this is looking a little rough for Tenjum. He did activate his Township there on the end step, but we do have a Kitchen Finks along with the Malera, so even if the Finks dies, that Malera is going to allow it to bolster onto itself.
Wow, another Kolaghan's Command. I guess this is the 3rd one out of the sideboard because we saw the other 2 get exiled.
Yeah, so this is going to give him a little bit of time. He's going to go up top, I imagine, for 2. Probably going to try and rebuy his P.A. Karen Nalar.
That would definitely be a good idea. I mean, he needs more board presence.
Oh, it looks like he went 2 damage and then destroy an artifact.
So I wonder if Andrew has lightning bolts or something that he can finish Bradley off with this turn.
Well, it looks like there's a Terminate and a Snapcaster Mage. He's going to ship the Terminate to the bottom, put the Snapcaster Mage on top.
Andrew can knock his opponent down to 6, and 2 lightning bolts would finish the job.
Yeah.
I think I saw a lightning bolt in his hand, actually, so if he's got
the Path to Exile. He's got a Dispel.
Oh, and he's got the Dispel. Can he do this?
With 2 bolts?
In a lot of ways, he's pretty far behind, but he might be able to just sneak this in there.
2 bolts.
Wow.
All right, so we're going to go to a game 3. Man,
and Andrew just sneaks it in there. That was impressive.
That was very, very well played by Andrew Tenjum, winning through the kitchen finks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think listening to me, you would think that the Abs Company deck was winning, and on most metrics it was winning, but Andrew was just barely able to cobble together the last few points of burn spells. I mean, Bradley at the end of that game had an overwhelming board position, but Andrew, being the tricky blue-red deck, was able to sculpt things in a way where he just sort of, had what he needed and had just barely enough of it.
Absolutely. I feel like Andrew Tenjum played that game very, very, very well. He was activating Lighthouse when he needed to try and find something. He stopped using it in spots where he didn't need to loot anymore. Ended the game with just a handful of cards in his deck. Just enough damage to eke out the game.
Yeah, there were a lot of decision points that Andrew made. For example, not activating the Tassiger when he had the opportunity to, and all kinds of other things. So I think the fact that he just barely squeezed in there, and with the multitude of decisions that he made throughout the game, that it's definitely worth rewatching and seeing just exactly how he navigated there.
Yeah, I think Bradley played that game just fine as well. There weren't any spots where I think he did something wrong. Just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that you could point to is when he had the Scavenging Ooze, he just X'd out a bunch of cards from Andrew Tenjum's life and didn't gain any life with his Scavenging Ooze. But at that point, Bradley was at 18, and I definitely would have made the exact same move that Bradley did.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm definitely excited to see how this game 3 goes, being as there's not much time left on the clock, and both players need to kill each other.
Yeah, I would expect that Andrew is going to shift over to a more Splinter Twin plan, but it depends on how he feels he's most likely to win given the amount of time.
So while these players finish up shuffling, let's go ahead and take a look at our creature collection.
Ooh, baby.
We do have Grizzly Brand, who is available now on playmat sleeves and player bundles. It's a big old bear.
Big old cuddly bear.
Big old cuddly bear with his tree trunk talons, I guess. And
maybe not the best to cuddle with, actually.
I mean, maybe you have to be the big spoon.
Yeah.
And you can find those, go.starcitygames.com/creature collection. We've got Tenjum on Grixis Twin, tied up 1-1 against Bradley Carpenter on Abzan Company. Both of these players are 4-1, and it looks like we have Bradley led on a Temple Garden tapped and passed, and Andrew is leading on a Darkslick Shores and going to use a Thoughtseize to take away that Eternal Witness. So Bradley has a Fiend Hunter, 2 Voice of Resurgence, and a Verdant Catacombs. We're going to see a Voice of Resurgence enter the battlefield for Bradley. This is going to be a real good card against Grixis Twin.
Yeah, for sure. This is exactly what Bradley wants, is to get some board presence that's difficult for Andrew to deal with. And this is also going to make any counter spells or anything else like that worse on Andrew's side. And
we're even going to see, more than likely, a second Voice of Resurgence here from Bradley this turn.
Ooh, maybe not. Just tapping a swamp.
Ooh, what do we got?
I think he might have drawn something.
Oh, Fulminator Mage? No. Oh, Wall of Roots, and then... Okay, that makes sense.
Well, that's a good line of play. Why have a Voice of Resurgence when you can have a Wall of Roots and a Voice of Resurgence?
Yeah. Just bargain bin magic.
Yeah.
That Wall of Roots is just giving you mana everywhere. Your turn, your opponent's turn, every opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Man.
So does Andrew have Anger of the Gods or anything like that? It doesn't look like it. That would be good on this board.
He does have a Damnation, but that's not going to do much against these voices.
Yeah. These voices are actually a pretty big threat. I mean, basically, if you look at it, Bradley has 4 power and 4 toughness on the board. He's going to be able to start clocking Andrew. And if Andrew wants to break that up, he's got a lot to slog through because the back halves of the voices are going to be bigger than the front half.
Yeah, I feel like his best chance at this point is going to be to try and combo Bradley out.
Absolutely.
So it looks like we've got a fetch for Tenjum. He's going to click himself main phase, shipping a lightning bolt to the bottom. It's still not looking very good. Bradley does have a decent army here. And if Andrew ever decides to try and get rid of one of those voices and use one of his resources, the back end is just going to end up being much better than the front end on that Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah, for sure. And given the fact that Andrew is just trading and put a lightning bolt on the bottom, I feel that means that he's just looking to preserve his life total in any way that he can and combo off.
So Bradley looks like he's going to fetch on a Windswept Heath here. Now it looks like he was going to tap 3 lands and his Wall of Roots, which sounds like we've got a Collected Company coming, which is bad news for Andrew Tenjum.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bradley is really essentially vomiting onto the board.
Now if Tenjum untaps here and Damnations Bradley down to only having one Voice of Resurgence token, that could be pretty good. But if Bradley's able to find something like Kitchen Finks or Voice of Resurgence, or even both off of this, it could be rough. And we've got
wow, Eternal Witness.
Witness, Kitchen Finks. Witness is going to rebuy that Collected Company, and Bradley's just going to pass the turn and say, "Show me what you got, Andrew Tenjum."
Yeah, I think Andrew really needs to get a combo real fast. Otherwise, he's going to kind of have a frown on his face.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like we've got a tap Darkslick Shorts for Andrew. He's kind of slowing down a little bit, trying to figure out what do I got to do here. Passing the turn back to Bradley, who looks to be like he's in the driver's seat. We do have a draw has happened. We are on Bradley's turn. Pestermite's been cast. We've got the Voice of Resurgence trigger. We're going to tap down the big Voice of Resurgence.
And so far, I don't believe that Bradley has a way to disrupt the combo if Andrew has it. Despite how bad this looks, Andrew might just untap and win the game.
Yeah, there's definitely a chance there. He also could just untap into a Damnation since he didn't have a second black source available that turn, and he played the Darkslick Shorts tapped.
Yeah, if he had the Damnation, I believe he'd be trading with the Voice of Resurgence, so I feel like it's safe to assume that he doesn't have it yet. Ooh, the Fiend Hunter, of course.
Yeah, we knew that he had the Fiend Hunter.
We did know that.
So
and Andrew knew that also, because that's from the Thoughtseize.
So I think that maybe I would have blocked the Voice of Resurgence there and just hoped to draw Damnation.
And Andrew doesn't have it.
But it does look like Bradley is going to take that match 2-1 against Andrew Tenjum with his Abzan Company deck. Andrew is going to fall to 4-2 with Grixis Twin. He is one of our players to watch. We are going to keep watching him. Hopefully he can rack up some more wins and make it into day 2.
Yeah, for sure. I really like Andrew as a player. I know he works really, really hard. He plays online a lot. He goes to a ton of the opens. You can always see him at the Invitational. I know he's hoping to make it into a Players' Championship. He's definitely a player that I think is really good and we can expect a lot from.
Yeah, now Bradley's deck looked like it operated very well there. He got